Hello everyone, welcome back to another premium mixing and mastering course here on MixBuzz TV. In this series, we're gonna break down a cool EDM techno track by an artist called Bernard, and the song is called Warning Contains Cannabis. By popular request, I think the very first in-depth mixing tutorial on techno, EDM, electronic music here. So by now you know how it works. The first part is going to be free for everyone, and there's going to be already a lot of good information in there, and the rest of the course is going to be members only. So if you want to see the entire course and also access all the other exclusive content and already reach an ever-growing library of in-depth mix and mastering courses, click the join button down here. See all the perks of becoming a MixBuzz TV member, which also gives you mix consultations with me via Skype or email. Let's start this. We're going to start this one a little bit differently. Of course, we're going to listen to the final product, so the mastered version of Bernard Warning Contained Cannabis, which is the name of the artist and the song. But while we are listening to the final product, I'm going to do what I usually do for something like this. So I'm going to recall all my hardware. So while we listen to the final product, you can see all my hardware settings, because of course in the song I used a mix between plugins and hardware. And of course for members you're gonna see the settings of every piece of hardware I use, and I'll explain of course in detail why I use a certain piece, why those settings. Let's take a listen to the snare. Here I have again a main snare, a dry snare, and also a parallel. So the snare actually is already one place where I have a lot of hardware. I have my API 500 on it in insert, and the parallel channel goes to my distressors with about 16 dB of compression. So let me bypass the API and bypass everything else. API, distressor, okay, in this case the level is not the same, obviously, because I wanted, as you can hear, the main sound to be the parallel basically. Okay, so most of the volume in the mix of the snare comes from my parallel channel. I'm going to show you how hard I'm hitting the distressors with this snare. Before going there, let me see what else I have on the snares. That you heard there's a long reverb, and in this snare long reverb, and it's automated only to come up here at the beginning of the song, so it gives me this splash right at the beginning of the song. So okay, and then after the breakdown, there is where I created this long reverb. It was actually to create a moment, a one-of-a-kind moment in the song. And you see it hits the very first hit after the breakdown. Let me play it. In this case, I'm purposely hitting the reverb on the first hit of the snare, not the second, and then the third again, and then I'm fading out, alternating, okay? This automation is the send to that long verb. The reason is because I wanted this snare verb to be heard, but of course when you drop a pretty obvious sound like that, and then you just hear it go away, the snare loses power. So this way we kind of trick the brain of letting it go and not get used to that first hit. Otherwise the snare is gonna sound weak for the rest of the song, and we don't want that. Let me show you what I used for this. Let me solo the snare. And in the SSL channel, I'm just cutting a little bit of low end here. And the verb is Spaced Out by Baby Audio, one of the newest plugins that I got, and it's really, really nice. I used, you can see it here, I don't want to move it, is Lush algorithm. So you have 4 algorithms here. I have a video review on this one. Lush algorithm, the length is 98%, so it's pretty long, and this is the space algorithm. No delay, of course, no dry, so all the way wet, only the reverb, okay? And I have some filtering on it, and the width is all the way up. I lowered the sand so it disappears gradually instead of it's not there anymore. I also have a main reverb snare that is here below that, and this is on all the time, okay? So there's no automation on this one. Let me play it for you. I used for this reverb my TC Electronic, the 82110. In the plate settings, you can see my settings here. The decay is pretty short, so I wanted a short, wide. I wanted a stereo effect on the snare because it's pretty mono, okay? Not that much tail, and also more brightness, but I didn't want to add it to the track itself, to the audio track. I just wanted a surrounding of brightness around it, and this did the trick. Important to notice is, of course, it's a 100% wet. The pre-delay is at 30 milliseconds. This separates our effect from the actual transient of the snare because we worked so hard to get that snap with the distressors. We don't want to draw it in reverb, even if it's short, okay? The early reflection would kind of phlegm it, so to speak. And this way we have a very clear transient on the dry snare and this sparkle behind it and around it. But I also EQ it after. I removed all the low end and the low mid. And I added a little bit of grit because this reverb is extremely clean and I want it a little bit dirty. Please notice how much difference does it make. It might not seem that much, but it actually, first of all, we have a maximum speed of 15 IPS, which rounds off the top end, which being that clean, it could kind of be too much. This way we kind of dirty it up a little bit with a flux. I'm not hitting it that hard. So there's not really that much in the way of the saturation of the preamp stage in it. The fact that we are using a tape emulator, it kind of rounds off this top end and it just blends better in the track. So without the processing, in the track with and without reverb. Okay, you only pick it up here and there, but overall it takes away this very claustrophobic feeling that the snare has without it, and it just sits in the track, which is pretty wide, you know, with all the synth and stuff. So it kind of glue it together. All right, let me show you how much I'm hitting the distressors so you have an idea, and also the settings for the API 5500. This is the snare with the parallel. Without. Now let me play only the parallel. Okay, and these are the settings for the snare, for the distressors. Let's go to the API. This is on the dry snare, so on the audio track. So what I'm doing here reflects on everything else. It reflects on the reverbs, and it reflects, of course, on the parallel, because this comes before everything else. Okay, so these were the hardware pieces that were on the snare.
Hands on my neck, hands grip my face.